Okay, so welcome back. All right, so here we have an efficient market. We know that, right? Because marginal cost equals marginal benefit here, and we have a price and a quantity coming off that. So it's a socially optimal price, socially optimal quantity. It's what the buyers and sellers agreed upon. I'm not going to go through the calculation. You can watch, if you have questions, watch the earlier videos, but I can tell you that in this market, let's understand a little bit about what we got. What's the maximum the buyer's willing to pay? Looks like 10. What's the minimum the seller's willing to take? Looks like 1. What's the agreed upon price? Looks like it's 7. And then if we go through and calculate consumer surplus, the consumer surplus in this case is going to be 360. The producer surplus is going to be 720, and the combined surplus for the entire market, right, is going to be 1,080. There you go. Now, let's see what kind of an effect a tax has on this. And if you think about it and say, all right, here's your tax right here. Well, where am I going to put that? Is a tax a benefit or a cost? And we're taking the position of the firms and households. We're not taking the position from the government's perspective, right? From, that's a different story. But from the perspective of a firm or a household, what is that tax? Well, it's not a benefit, it's a cost. So literally per increment, I'm just going to add the tax right onto the marginal cost curve, and it just increases. So if this is my tax and I add it on to this, this increment here, then boom, there you go. And then I add it up here, boom, there you go. And I keep adding it. And so what it looks like once I add it all in is supply plus taxes. And that's really an awful line. Let's try that again. It's a little bit better, but there you go. That's what it looks like. Now, what do we do with that? What's the impact to the market? Well, here's how you assess it. This becomes a new equilibrium point, right? Where these two intersect. And what that's going to be, what that intersection is going to define is what the buyer is now paying. So in this case, we'll say it's 8, okay? If I go down here and look at where that intersects, here's one of the ways I can determine, actually the best way to determine what the actual tax was, is to look where this original supply or marginal cost curve intersects the axes, and then look where the new one with the tax added intersects, and just subtract. So in this case, 4 minus 1 is 3. So the tax in this case is going to be 3. Now, if I extend this line down here from this new equilibrium point, it's going to give me the new quantity that is going to be exchanged in the market. In this case, it's 160. Okay, and then where this intersects the old supply curve is going to give me what the seller is keeping. Okay, and again, the easiest way to kind of figure this out is intersection there tells me what the buyer's paying. Buyer's paying 8 now. I know what the tax is because 4 minus 1 is 3. 8 minus 3, the tax, is 5, which is what the seller's keeping. And that should kind of just intrinsically make sense. So now that I have this, I can answer the question, does a tax make a market efficient or inefficient? And the answer is ceteris paribus. In most cases, a tax makes a market inefficient. Why? Well, because now if I go through and I calculate where's my consumer surplus, well, consumer surplus, the maximum the consumer is willing to pay is 10, right? But now the consumer's paying 8, right? And then we take this over to the new quantity that's being exchanged, and it's consumer, so it's going to be demand curve. So there's the consumer surplus. And again, I'm not going to go through the calculations, but in this case, the consumer surplus is going to be, looks like I'm going to do it, 160. Where's my producer surplus? Okay, well, producer surplus is going to be, what is the amount that the seller is receiving? 5 in this case. What's the minimum that they're willing to take? 1. Again, trace this back to the quantity and down the supply curve. So this becomes my producer surplus. And in this case, if you do the calculations, the producer surplus is going to be 320. And now we can see this big space between the producer and consumer surplus. What's that? Well, that's the tax revenue that's going to go to the government. So again, the buyer's paying 8. There's the $3 worth of tax, right? Because the seller's going to keep 5. And then we bring it out here to the quantity that's being exchanged. And this rectangle right here is the tax revenue. So tax revenue. So again, if you go through and do the calculations, the tax revenue is going to be 480. And what does that leave? Well, again, just like the last video that we saw, there is this portion right here that's left over, and we know what that's called, right? Because we've lost some quantity, right? There's, this is what the market wants to produce and exchange and buy, but this is what's actually being exchanged, and this becomes our dead weight loss, which again, in this instance, is going to be 120, and there you go. There's the answer to the question. Taxes, ceteris paribus, make markets inefficient because in most cases they create deadweight loss. And that's one of the definitions of how you know a market is inefficient, if there's deadweight loss present in the market. Okay? So, I think that just about does it for taxes. All right, we'll see you soon.